Occasionally, pet snakes make the headlines when they end up killing their owners or an innocent visitor to the property, but mostly the reptiles are harmless if cared for well. This time, when police receive a tip-off from a concerned neighbor about David Riston, they barge into his property to find him lifeless on the floor. But that's not the only shock they have that day. Inside his home, they discover something they had never seen before. Hit like and subscribe. This is Fierce. Many people develop a fascination with the natural world and all its creatures. 49-year-old David Riston was a snake fanatic, but it wasn't known just how far his obsession with the animals had gone until one day a concerned neighbor called the police out to his property. Nobody had seen or heard from David for more than 24 hours, which was unusual for him, so his neighbor went and paid him a visit. As they peered through the window, they could see David lying on the floor, not moving. They banged on the door, but David didn't flinch. It was the evening of January 19, 2022, when police officers turned up at David's property in Pomfret, Maryland. When officers arrived, they immediately broke down the door and stormed the house. They found David lying on the floor. At first, it was assumed he had suffered a heart attack or something similar. But what had happened? The officers were about to find out, although it threw up more questions than answers. David began collecting snakes when he was younger. What began as a hobby turned into something much more. He was fascinated by every tiny detail. He considered himself an expert, poring over snake books and facts. Over the years, his snake collection grew. To allow him to keep pet snakes, he secured a captive reptile and amphibian permit in Maryland. It allowed him to keep certain snakes on his property. But what officers found when they entered his house that day was something that they had never seen before. As they made their way through the house, they came across walls of tanks and cages, all placed on shelves and racks, stacked on top of each other. They covered most of the house. Inside them were snakes, and lots of them. Each of them was housed in meticulously kept tanks. When experts arrived, they were able to identify the snakes, and incredibly, they counted 124 of them in total. A Charles County Sheriff's Office spokesperson said that their chief animal control officer, who had been working in the role for 30 years, had never come across anything like it before. The sheer number of snakes was extraordinary, and it didn't take a genius to work out that David may have fallen victim to any one of his venomous snakes. Despite the large number of snakes, it was clear that David cared for them well. Their tanks were spotlessly clean, and all the animals were well fed. David must have spent a fortune on feeding them and providing adequate housing, including running the electricity day and night to keep their tanks warm. He knew what he was doing when it came to keeping them, but even an expert can make a mistake, and this time it cost him his life. It was incredible that nobody had any idea that David was keeping that many reptiles on his property. He had kept it a secret from his neighbors and friends. And that's not all. Most of the snakes were exotic and highly venomous. In fact, David's permit did not allow him to keep half of the snakes he had there. One large tank housed a 14-foot Burmese python. Not a venomous snake, but one which could easily constrict a full-grown man if it was hungry or felt threatened. But the enormous python was the least of the inspector's worries. Inside David's house were some of the most venomous snakes in the world. Among them were spitting cobras, king cobras, black and green mambas, and rattlesnakes. Any one of these could have delivered a bite that would have killed David. A tiny error in judgment on David's part, or one of the snakes suddenly feeling threatened, would have caused it to strike out. Most likely, David would have had time to call for help before succumbing to the toxins, but maybe there was a reason he didn't want to make that call. Maybe he thought he would be able to recover from the bite without medical intervention, or perhaps he didn't want emergency services to discover all the reptiles he kept at home. In Maryland, it's illegal to possess venomous snakes, so David could have been in trouble with the law if they had found out about his hobby. As it turns out, he found himself in a whole lot more trouble that day. When the coroner conducted the autopsy, it was indeed concluded that David had died from a venomous bite, but it was not specified which toxin was found inside his system. There were no details released to the public following the coroner's report. There were so many questions still surrounding the suspicious death, but in the end, it was ruled an accident by the chief medical examiner. Although looking after such fascinating creatures was clearly an enjoyable hobby for David, it ultimately cost him his life. In a split second, the snake had struck out and delivered the lethal dose. If it had directly pierced an artery near the head or chest, then the action of the venom can be much more rapid than if the extremity of a limb was struck. Within his collection, David possessed a spitting cobra. There are several different species of spitting cobra, each of them having the unique ability to spit their venom from their fangs. They do this as a defensive tactic when they feel threatened. Spitting cobras actively direct their venom at the animal's face and eyes, with the purpose of blinding the potential threat so that they can get away. They can hit a target more than 6 feet or 2 meters away. However, as well as spraying their venom, spitting cobras can also inject it, much like other venomous snakes. This is how they kill their prey. Typically, the venom that is injected rather than sprayed is delivered in a greater volume. Anyone with underlying health conditions can fall victim to a spitting cobra bite. However, despite the neurotoxic and cytotoxic properties of their venom, spitting cobras rarely cause human fatalities. But David had far more lethal snakes in his collection. The black mamba is Africa's most feared snake. It's regarded as highly aggressive, lightning fast, and capable of delivering venom that can kill a man within minutes. Without antivenom, a human will most likely die after being bitten by a black mamba because the venom is so potent. After 10 minutes, severe symptoms tend to present themselves. There was no mention made publicly by the coroner whether any puncture wounds were found on David. Black mambas often bite multiple times in quick succession. Following tingling of the bite site, neurological signs begin to take hold. Very rapidly, the victim can lose consciousness, and typically they develop respiratory failure, quickly followed by cardiac arrest. Most of the symptoms occur within 45 minutes of being bitten, and typically the victim dies between 7 and 15 hours later if no medical treatment is administered. Could Africa's most feared snake have been responsible for David's death? Nobody knows for sure. With many venoms possessing a similar concoction of enzymes and having similar effects on their victims, it isn't necessarily possible to determine exactly which snake's venom was to blame. So what happened to all those snakes at the house? Expert and licensed snake handlers were brought in to transport them out of the state. The non-venomous snakes were reportedly taken to Virginia, while the venomous snakes were transported to North Carolina.